that. We are live. Welcome. Good afternoon. Good evening for all of you folks joining us in Europe, the Middle East, Asia. Good morning to everybody out on the West Coast. We're in St. Louis, Missouri at LIT Cigar Lounge, just after completing this year's PCA Convention and Trade Show in New Orleans. I'm very, very happy and excited to be in St. Louis for the first time. Well, actually, I should say Chesterfield,
Missouri,
just outside of St. Louis, with Brian Snyder. We have his son Andrew sitting right next to us, and we want to give you a little bit of a virtual tour of LIT Cigar Lounge first, and Brian will talk with me a little bit about how this place came to be and how this beautiful, beautiful family business came to life. And then Andrew and I will have a little chat about the PCA trade show and our impressions from this year's PCA 2025 in New Orleans. Brian, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for being here.
For your hospitality, for having me and welcoming me here in Chesterfield at LIT Cigar Lounge. This is an incredible place, and I have to really take my hat off to you because you've done a fabulous job in putting together quite an experience, whether it's the bar, the barrel picks, the humidor, which is incredibly well curated, and you have an incredible staff working with you.
We do.
Not least your wife and your son. Tell us a little bit about how LIT Cigar Lounge came to be and what your background is and how you transitioned into the cigar business.
Well, thank you first. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time after the trade show to come to Chesterfield, Missouri. It's an honor to have you here. We're very excited for these next couple of days. Thank you for your comments about the lounge. This has been, I guess we'll call it a labor of love. My background is in the retail automotive space. It's where I've spent the last 32 years of my life and had always been a cigar smoker. And like a lot of people, thought this would be the easiest business in the whole world, and we'll start a cigar shop. And when my son went to college his first year, I convinced my wife to go on this venture with me. And what started as a vision to just have a small little shop and lounge has grown to quite the monster. So we're very proud. I take almost no credit. I tease these guys all the time that my title is the chief visionary, but they all execute every single day. And from the design and the aesthetics of the place to the interactions with our customers every day, to the cigars that have been curated in the humidor, to the liquor selection of barrel picks, it's all them. They get all the credit for that. So they've done a nice job. My wife and I have been very fortunate to travel and do some cool things in our life. And our vision all along was we knew how to take care of people and we knew how to provide a great experience. And we thought if we could start with that as our baseline, we'd figure the rest out. We'd figure out the cigars, we'd figure out the spirits. But if we had the ability to provide a good experience and take care of people, we knew we'd be in good shape.
You told me last night that the automotive industry is your background and also what got you into cigars, because it's definitely a thing that is common amongst people in your industry, your field of work. Now, you still dabble in that industry
every single day,
and this is sort of your little side gig. And
yes.
We'll give you a little tour in just a few minutes, and then you'll see what enormous kind of a side gig it is. You called it a labor of love, and I can totally attest to that. What inspirations did you take from your main industry, from the automotive industry, from the retail side and translate it over into the premium cigar space?
So the most important thing that carried over was the relationship piece of the business. I've spent my entire automotive career. I'm very lucky to work for a dealer who relationships are everything that he's about. And early on in my career with him, he always taught me that, you know, it's not always about the dollars and cents. It's not always about having to be right. It's about establishing great partnerships and helping those partners succeed, and those partners will help you succeed. And when we started this business, that's the very first thing that we put in place here. We wanted to choose to do business with people that we knew we could eventually help and that would help us when we got started. And we've been very, very fortunate.
And also in terms of the product, I guess, you told me that there's quite a wide variety of automotive brands
For sure.
you work with. Similar to in the humidor, there's a wide variety of different products, different price points. But I would imagine, and me coming from the hospitality side of things, I always learned that it's not necessarily just about the product.
Not at all.
It's certainly about what you mentioned, building those relationships and taking care of your customer, creating that experience first. And then the product aspect, of course, is very important as well, because you care about how the cigar smokes, how the car drives. But it's sort of the amalgamation of the mix of all of these aspects that creates a successful business.
It is, and you can't be one dimensional. You know, in our automotive world, we don't cater to one type of client. We have high-end luxury brands, we have import brands that are less expensive, and you have to be a place where everyone is comfortable going and everyone has access to something in your portfolio. And so we've tried really hard to make sure that not only the bar, but the humidor is set up that way as well. Anyone can come in here at nearly any price point and find something that they'll truly enjoy.
When you started to envision the customer journey or the experience that the guests here at the lounge would have, what were some of the major pillars that you wanted to focus on? I would imagine based on your own experiences in other cigar shops and lounges. What are some of these golden nuggets where you feel that's what truly makes a cigar lounge, bar, retail stand out from the crowd?
We really want it to be a consultative experience. We want, when someone comes in here, if you want some suggestions, we are happy to provide suggestions. If you don't want suggestions and you know what you want to smoke and you know what you want to drink, no problem at all. You take it. We don't ever want to have the approach that we're the ultimate expert and we know what's good for you. You know what's good for you. And if you want us to assist you in making some suggestions in the humidor, suggestions behind the bar, good pairing suggestions, we're here to help.
Also, not chasing the customer the moment he walks into the door. That's something that sometimes bothers me when you walk into different sorts of retail businesses, and you feel like somebody's creeping up on you, and he's waiting to hard sell you on something that they want to get rid of. And obviously, it's important to be there and offer advice and service and accompany them, because a good tobacconist retailer knows how to take people on that journey or be a servant and a fellow along their cigar journey, which evolves over the years. But you want to find that balance between being attentive and being there for the customer, but without necessarily overstepping boundaries or being too pushy.
And you want people, when they walk through the front door, if they've never been here before, you want them to feel comfortable in the space and give them a couple minutes to figure out what's going on. You know, where should I go? Where am I going to sit? What, look at the bar. You don't want to immediately pounce them the minute that they come in.
Which other points did you take into consideration? I guess the way you welcome people from the moment that they walk in, where you guide them towards, or where you lead them when they walk in. Another thing that I have to applaud you for is the air quality in here is exceptional. So you know that you don't walk out smelling like an ashtray for the next 4 days. And that's particularly important when you want to attract also a female audience, or have a well-balanced audience and a welcoming environment for couples.
Definitely. We're a very couple-friendly and female-friendly lounge. I would argue to say we are one of the most diverse lounges in the state. And we are that for that reason. My wife gets the credit for the design and the aesthetics of the place, and air quality was a huge piece of that. We spent, I think I told you last night, we spent 25% of our total project cost was on the HVAC and ventilation. We knew it was important. We knew that non-smokers needed to be able to come here and be comfortable. And also, even when you have a traditional smoker that goes home, if they don't have to burn their clothes in the garage before they come inside, then they're going to come back. And so it's very important.
I want to give everybody a quick tour with the laptop in just a moment, but before we do that, and I know you have an appointment that you need to run to, so Andrew is going to take over in a little moment. But from your experience, having been a cigar smoker for most of your adult life, what are some of the things that inspire you most about the industry, or what are some of the things that you have truly grown to love when it comes to premium cigars and the industry?
I think my favorite thing is there's always innovation in this space. There is not a single company that we do business with that is just putting out one product portfolio and never making adjustments or never making new additions or never removing things that might not be as popular, and watching the innovation in this business. And, you know, very similar to the automotive side, there's so much family tradition in this business where you have first, second, third, and greater generations involved in this business. And that's what drew me to this business. It's the family aspect, and there's always something new that every company is working on.
And it's exactly what you're building here as well.
For sure.
Hopefully a multi-generational family business.
It's going to cost him, but yeah, but definitely.
What do you think the cigar industry or the retail side of things could learn from the automotive industry and your background?
I think the experience makes all the difference. When someone walks in the door and the place is dirty and it looks unorganized, that puts an immediate negative impression on the consumer. And it doesn't matter how good your price is. It doesn't matter how great your products are. If someone walks in the door and the place looks unorganized or doesn't look like it's cared for, you're never going to get that consumer back in the door. And that's very, very similar in the automotive space. It's funny, our company tagline on the automotive side is where price sells cars, but it's truly the experience. You know, it's very, very important.
You know, one thing that I think about a lot is not only because of COVID, but with everything that's going on in the world, digitalization, everything is online, fast pace, AI changing pretty much every industry. You have to be worried that the traditional mom and pop shop is a dying art. How do you feel about the retail landscape, no matter which industry, is evolving? And how do you think we can still make sure that places like this one here and the traditional, no matter how small or big, mom and pop brick and mortar shops can not only survive, but truly thrive, even against the competition online and everything that's happening in that realm and the virtual landscape?
So I think I told you this story last night when COVID came to light in the automotive space. The consensus from the experts in the automotive space was that consumers were no longer, now they had a reason to never come to the dealership, and they were only going to want to transact online, and the dealer was going to be nothing but a medium for the product, and consumers did not want to interact with the dealership personnel, and nothing could have been further from the truth. At the end of the day, if you provide good service, the consumer still wants that touch and still wants that experience. The other thing is we really, really focus on giving back to the community, and we make sure, not for ego purposes, but we make sure that people understand that we are constantly giving back to the community, and their support here in the lounge fuels that 100%. And if you want to continue to have good in your community, you need to continue to support places like this, because we're turning around and we're doing that same thing. We're supporting all of our friends, all of our neighbors, all of the local charities. You know, we rarely say no to anyone. And we find a way to try to do some small part to help everyone. And I think that's the key to the mom and pop brick and mortar space. And if you can provide good experience, you have good product selection, and you can do something with those things that you've benefited from, then you're in good shape.
It even goes to the extent of taking care of regulatory matters, having the bigger picture in mind, what's happening on the state level.
For sure.
When you talk about that local aspect and the community aspect, you had briefly mentioned how you even thought about, you know, bringing some of the decision makers either in here or into your world to explain to them what's actually happening here.
Correct.
How do you think the retail community nationwide can be successful in doing that and finding a closer contact to their elected officials? And just another bit of information, Andrew and I, we witnessed that at the PCA trade show on Friday before the show opened. During the seminar and educational day, the governor of Louisiana showed up on stage, lit up an Alphazox, and gave a short but very strong speech to the audience. And I think that was a first in the history of the trade show, that the highest representative of the state showed up on stage for the PCA and expressed his love and appreciation of the enjoyment of premium cigars, the industry, and the business it brings.
Yeah, you know, there's an old saying that says, if you're not talking to those decision makers, your naysayers and competition are. And so we want to be at the forefront of that. And, you know, to your original question, my advice to retailers would be, if you're not the type where you want to engage with elected officials, at least get involved and support organizations like the PCA and the CRA, who are actively making those contacts every single day. And then if you have the ability, invite those people into your lounge. Don't just invite one side. You have to engage with both people, both sides, and you have to make sure that people understand that we're doing things the right way. Brick and mortar stores are not, by the majority, are not looking to sidestep laws and regulations. We want to abide by all of the laws and regulations, but we want to protect our business. And so it's important for elected officials to know that you're not trying to get away with something. You're not trying to do something to improve your situation. You're just trying to protect your business.
Yeah. And just because we're smoking a cigar from Steve Saka, I remember when he was on the Cigar Authority podcast with Dave Garofalo from Two Guys Smoke Shop. They also spoke about a limited edition cigar that they just did for an association, or basically an industry lobbying group in New Hampshire, and they've been very successful in working with their elected officials to protect the business and the premium cigar enjoyment in their state. Do you have something similar here in Missouri, or does it come down to the personal efforts and your investment working with these?
We're in the very early stages, but we want to establish an association in the state. So I think it'll be important to engage with all of the retailers in the state to get that done. But it's very important to us. And to your point about Dave, I'll just tell you a quick little story. Probably 5 or 6 months ago, Andrew had a situation come up that we had never experienced here in the lounge before. And as a total cold call, he reached out to Dave. And Dave picked up the phone and called him and had a conversation with him about what he had experienced and how he would best address that situation. And I think if you find a retailer community like that, that will stick together and help each other. It doesn't matter how close you are in proximity. We're very, very close with the other lounges here in town. We visit the other lounges here in town. If we don't have something, we'll send someone to another lounge that has that particular product. And the more support that we can give each other will protect this business for a long time.
I think that's such an important point, and I believe we even discussed it on the show previously, and I've experienced that manifold in the hospitality industry. The best thing that could happen to you as a restaurant or bar owner is having another great place open up just a difficult word, a few blocks down the road, or just, in the building next door.
Yeah.
Because rising tide raises all ships. And especially in an industry as small and tightly knit as the premium cigar space, that's even more crucial and important. And oftentimes people think of, oh, but that's competition and he's going to take away business from me. Everybody needs to find their own voice, their own identity. And then as a matter of consequence, you will attract a certain audience and your customer base. And maybe there's going back and forth between one and the other, or they all stay within their lanes and frequent the lounge or the shop that they feel most comfortable with anyways, right? But our job is not taking a piece of somebody else's pie. It's growing the pie for everybody.
Absolutely.
Live and let live. And this industry has many enemies from the outside world. And the last thing that we need is inside competition.
100%. We have to help each other. We truly do.
Brian, thank you very, very much
Thank you.
for joining me today.
Absolutely.
And for the wonderful experience that you offer here. Why don't we do a quick walk around, if you don't
Perfect.
mind, and I'll try to take you guys on a tour and carry the laptop while Brian and Andrew can introduce you to
Absolutely.
LIT Cigar Lounge and what's going on here.
Absolutely.
So we just hid in the little corner here, really, because it's very comfortable and well lit. Well lit, actually, no pun intended. But we'll show you a little bit of the size and the operation here, which is quite remarkable. So whilst I'm carrying this, gentlemen, why don't you walk us through what we're seeing and what's happening?
Absolutely. Andrew, lead the way.
So we tried to set it up basically two different concepts. So we have our full humidor. This is where majority of lounges, and then it breaks kind of into more of the bar, try to keep them a little bit separated. As he said, my mother designed the entire place. She wanted it all glass. Make sure you can see everything while you're sitting down, almost like you're window shopping, while still keeping the really, really clean aesthetic. Then bar wise, basically the same entire thing. We have probably too many bottles for the space we have. But I think
Never be enough bottles.
No, agreed. So yeah, we try to curate as much as we can: Scotch, tequilas, rums, bourbons, rye. We have beers as well. As you guys talked about last night, they are very big wine people, so tons of wine as well.
Which, and we have to mention that is not a very common thing in cigar lounges or bars in the US. So whenever I suggest my sneaky little wine pairings for the Marvel cigar events, it's always a little challenge. People like their bourbons here and their single malt scotches, which is perfectly fine. But it's good to have a bit of a change of pace.
Very much so.
Have you seen a single barrel Cabernet selection before?
Oh,
See?
Yeah.
that's a first. Let's see if we can get that on camera a little more. Well, and speaking of barrel picks, here is your selection of LIT barrel picks. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how that works and how do you make and select your barrels?
So we've done both experiences. We've picked here at the lounge, but we've also traveled to the distilleries to make a great number of our picks. It's such an incredible experience to be able to walk through the distillery with the master distiller, with the ambassador, select directly from the barrel and make a good selection. A good friend of ours taught us a long time ago that it's not most important to always what you like. It's about what the consumer will enjoy drinking. And so we've always tried to keep that in mind when we've made our single barrel selections, that what's going to appeal to the greatest number of consumers.
over here.
Yeah.
Here's the entrance over there.
Yeah, more lounge space, more big group seating. As my father talked about, we have a lot of couples who come in, so this is perfect for that couple setting. Small patio, right outside of the doors right now. And then sitting over here, we've got all of our lockers. I believe we're sitting around 130 members currently. We are not members only. We just offer that membership aspect. And then as Reinhard saw last night, these two tables, great for meetings, big groups, but we also take the tops off, have a poker game, have a little bit more fun in the early week.
Beautiful. And then just right over there in the corner is a private meeting room as well.
Yes, which hopefully in the next coming weeks, we'll have a fun announcement with. So stay tuned to that on all of our social media. Should be fun.
So just a quick little tour. I have to say the lighting is exceptional. It's beautiful and very distinct, very recognizable. So you said that even when people take pictures and post them on social media,
Yes.
you don't even have to tag LIT Cigar Lounge, or you don't have to tell them.
You know where they are.
Yes.
That's a great
Yeah.
point. So we'll walk right back to our corner setup over there, continue enjoying our cigars. Brian, I think you have to run to an appointment, but I wanted to thank you again
Thank you.
for
Thank you very
your
much.
hospitality and for the wonderful experience you've created here.
If you make it to Chesterfield, Missouri, please come and see us. We would love to welcome you.
Certainly. And Andrew and I will continue our conversation, and we'll talk a little more about the PCA Convention and Trade Show, particularly Andrew's impressions and his takeaways from the show. Brian, thank you very much, and we'll get right back over there. This is a beautiful little corner over here as well. Again, good for couple seating.
Yes.
and a fun night out on a Friday and Saturday. Another quick little look of the humidor. Andrew, tell us a little bit about the selection of product that you have in here and the brands you feature.
Really our biggest aspect is, as my father said, create partners. So a lot of the smaller brands you see are ones that have been with us for a long time, ones that we really wanted to grow with. And then you have your mix of legacy, your Fuente, your Rocky, your Oliva, Davidoff, Padron. This area really fuels off of those companies. So I'd say Fuente is probably one of our biggest. You saw in the left corner, it is just a massive wall of Fuente essentially. So the way I basically tell my guys is, you're going to have your products that everybody knows, but I want them to kind of deep dive. I want them to be able to talk to the consumer, explain all these small brands domain like you smoked last night. Very small. I think they're only at about 60 accounts countrywide now. But we love that kind of stuff. We love to deep dive into tobacco, and really make people understand that it's not the name on the band, it's who's behind it. And I think we've done a pretty good job of curating that mix.
So I hope you enjoyed our quick little tour of LIT here. Obviously, as always, if you guys have questions, if you want to chime in, please, we have a little bit of a different setup here. We're sitting next to each other, having our conversation rather than a virtual guest joining us. But of course, if you have any thoughts, questions, chime in and share your thoughts with us, please. So let's talk about the PCA Convention and Trade Show. A couple of firsts or changes for this year. I think it was exactly 10 years ago that the PCA was last in New Orleans, and change of pace, change of convention center. After Vegas, now there's 2 years of PCA in New Orleans. This was the first. Next year, we're going to be at the same space before eventually returning to Las Vegas. What were your thoughts on New Orleans as a host city and the environment?
I personally liked it. I went into it dreading it, because, Vegas, there's always so much to do outside of the trade show, all different restaurants to go to. And it was my first trip to New Orleans. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. The weather was much better than Vegas. Definitely
We were
not
particularly lucky, we have to say, because it was 3 days of
high 70s with a very nice breeze. It was gorgeous. But I thought outside of the trade show, it was walkable everywhere. There was obviously French Quarter Festival, Strawberry Festival, a lot of things going on. So there was a lot of stuff to do. If
And
you
a lot of
didn't,
people in the city also.
and a lot of people, which brought the atmosphere just that much better. But as far as the venue itself, I know we joked about it a little bit last night. You know, the air quality of the convention center struggled a little bit, but there's a lot of people smoking a lot of cigars. But
And also I would say that aspect is certainly out of the hands of the
Right.
PCA organization.
right,
And I wanted to give massive credit to Joshua Habersky and his entire team of putting together a remarkable trade show. It started with the Friday,
Yeah.
registration day, educational schedule of seminars,
Yeah.
hand-rolled, had a beautiful premiere of their latest documentary featuring the Aroa family, Justo Aroa in particular, but also Christian and Julio
Julio,
Aroa,
yep.
and his sons Justo and Christian were part of the documentary as well. Panel discussions about the next generations of cigar makers. David Savona from Cigar Aficionado on stage with Guy Fieri for a very fun interview. And Guy Fieri obviously being a great ambassador for premium
Fantastic.
cigars as a celebrity, but truly as a very engaged cigar smoker. Because unlike most other celebrity collaboration brands, whatever you want to call it, Guy Fieri is very involved
Yeah.
in hosting events, being present at the trade show. So that was a great interview as well. But then I think the opening reception was phenomenal.
The opening reception, from what I had heard from people I talked to and my experience. So that was my third trade show I've been to. By far the best opening party. They had the entire park. There was, I believe it was Steve Saka actually who posted something this morning, and one thing he highlighted was the amount of places to sit.
Yeah.
Us cigar people, we want to sit, talk, and smoke, and they did amazing on that. Again, we got very lucky with weather, so that helped it.
So just to give context or provide context for this, the opening reception was hosted in a beautiful park just outside of the convention center, and there was a big marching band walking people or accompanying people from the seminars over to the park.
Yeah.
They had live music there, different food stalls, bars, different cigar manufacturers on tables handing out cigars. Obviously, Guy Fieri was there taking pictures and signing hats and signing boxes for everybody. But the food was great.
Fantastic.
As you said, plenty of seating, and I think a very welcoming environment.
There was a really good vibe around it, you know, with everything that's been happening in the cigar industry the last month. You know, nobody really knew how the show was going to go, and I think that was the perfect start. Everybody was in a fantastic mood. Yeah, it was perfect start to roll into Saturday.
That's an interesting point. And before the trade show started, I saw, especially on the media, a lot of people were nervous about the whole tariff situation.
Yeah.
There was a lot of uncertainty going into the show, and people said, this is going to be the talk of town, and everybody will just talk tariffs on the trade show floor. Oddly enough, I didn't
No.
really hear any of that. And people were like, okay, well, whatever it's going to be, we'll deal with it
Yeah.
when it actually comes. But there, as you said, there was plenty of excitement, good spirits, and also business seemed very, very stable. What was
did.
your impression about attendance, foot traffic on the show floor, and how busy the booth seemed?
Obviously there are some booths that are going to be busy the entire weekend. Cencia, Fuente, Davidoff, those were slammed all weekend long. But from what I can notice, especially after the past 2 years in Vegas, attendance was much higher. It was more spread out footprint. So you weren't running over people as you were trying to get to
Didn't feel
meetings.
as crowded.
Right. But when you would, you know, you wouldn't see the same person twice in one day. There was representation from all over the country. I had seen more shops from the East Coast than I ever had. And I think that brought the vibe up a little bit. Because obviously West Coast to Midwest, South, East, we're all a little bit different in how we go about the industry and especially go about the trade show. So I thought that many different characters being there was really good for the show. And a lot of smaller retailers as well were able to make it down for the first time.
Plenty of international people as well.
Plenty.
And we know the PCA, we discussed it here, has been very adamant about the fact that they wanted to embrace international markets and truly create like a global cigar community and include a lot of the international folks in the PCA realm as well. The other thing that I recognized is plenty more exhibitors.
Yeah.
And overall, the number of badges that the PCA gave out was significantly up from years prior.
Yeah.
Did you visit a lot of the newer exhibitors, or did you see a lot of new brands that you really haven't had a chance to engage with before?
I didn't visit many. There were a couple that I had heard about that I was interested in. One highlighted that I had smoked a couple things before, but I made sure to stop by and talk with him, was Definition. He's out of Texas. He's a really, really cool guy. I believe it's the first year he had a booth at the show. And I think if the PCA continues the way they're doing, you'll see a lot more of that. I think it's very inviting. There were a lot of very big retailers that you don't see bring on many new brands that we're going over and checking them out. So I again, just like there were smaller retailers that it's very good for the show, I think same thing with manufacturers.
On that note, were there particular products or new releases that piqued your interest?
Well, Carlito, I think, owned the show a little bit. You had his OPSEC Society release, you had his DuPont release, you had his LA Blue release, not to mention all of the new product he dropped just within his own booth. So I think Fuente kind of stole the show a little bit, at least for Saturday, Sunday. But the reason I chose to smoke Saka today, for the last 3 years, I think I've gone into the show with more excitement for what he is releasing than anybody else. I think he's getting pretty innovative. He is truly listening to his end consumer. He doesn't really care if he grows it or not. He's just going to lean into them and give them what they want. So like you're smoking the Solita Red. It's a riff off their original Sober Mesa Solita. Yeah, fantastic cigar. He released a new red meat lover. It's called the Fritanga. Leaned in more to what his people were saying, which is we want bigger, we want bolder, even though the red meat lover is a big, strong cigar. And then on the retailer side, you know, he helps you out a ton. You know, when you're placing orders, you know, he has that kind of unobtainium factor to him within his company, which is the unicorns. And that's where you're able to get those. And so I think the excitement around his booth the entire weekend was really, really good. As I mentioned before, Placencia, with their new release, couldn't tell you how to say it, Silo, Cello, highest elevation tobacco. They had a huge launch party for it, private, champagne was popping, that kind of stuff I think is really fun to see at the show. Other than that, I think everybody kind of had that one niche to them that drew you to that booth. One company I wanted to shout out was Crown Heads. I don't know if you got to go by the booth at all.
Absolutely. I sat with John Huber. Had a great conversation as always.
Their rebrand is fantastic. I think they kind of got caught for a little bit in what we were talking about last night, that limited edition overload. And so they took a step back and they didn't release any limited editions. They did a full rebrand on Lil Diaz, which has to be their best-selling brand. La Imperiosa, their new Broadway, and then Tim Osgener with the new what is it? Carbota. You know, it's Oz. You never know what it's called. But great branding all throughout. I think that is going to revive that company. I'm really excited to see what that does for them.
And also with their slight, not a change of ownership necessarily, but
the transfer of hands.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because Mike Conder took a step back and retired, and Tim Osgener took over his shares. So there's a stronger focus again amongst the two main people.
Yes.
With Tim Osgener and John Huber being fully in charge. I think a lot of people were excited about Davidoff being back at the show.
Yes.
The booth wasn't necessarily loud or
No.
flashy or
No.
screaming. It just felt very normal and natural that they were back. they released a couple of new products as well.
They did.
Like a limited edition for Avo. They had the Escurio 10, I believe, which must have been introduced at the last New Orleans trade show
Yeah.
about 10 years ago.
Yes,
And a strong focus on Zeno,
very strong focus on Zika.
with a very distinct color code,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes.
And Reem being the larger than life figure and brand representative that he is.
Yeah.
One thing that I also found very interesting, I don't know if you had a chance to try it, but Drew Estate did something that I thought was phenomenal. They set up a tobacco experience where you could smoke through the different wrappers
Yeah.
they put on their Ligas.
Yes.
So you had the Liga number 9 wrapper and the 2 other renditions that you could smoke individually. And I think that is phenomenal. And I would love to see more of that, of manufacturers not purely focusing on the business and sales side of things, but on the educational.
I did get to partake in the Liga experience, and I didn't really know what to expect. All they tell you when you reach out is you're invited to come to our Tour de Liga experience. And I was like, okay, that works. And it was a very intimate setting where you got to be with Izzy, who's their head of consumer engagement. And she walked you through number 9, the soil that they use up in Connecticut, why they do what they do, the difference between the number 9 and 52 when it comes to P-loans and rotating, how long that process actually takes. And then you were with Pedro, who's their brand ambassador, who he is a ball of energy. You got to kind of keep up with them a little bit. And then you had Willie for the H99, and they each separate rooms. They had a chocolate and almond and a water cracker pairing for all of them. I thought it was one of the coolest things I've seen anybody do at the show. And it allows you to get, more intimate with those personalities. Izzy, you don't see a ton unless you're at a barn smoker or a Tour de Liga as a consumer. Pedro, you only really see him at the show or if you do an event with him. And Willie is Willie. So I thought it was a great place to be able to take a consumer or a retailer who likes to nerd out and deep dive in with them.
What are some of the things that you would like to see during next year's trade show? Certain things you would like to see change, or you would like to see more impetus and focus on?
Nothing really changed. I think this year PCA put on a fantastic show. It ran very smoothly. I'd say the only thing really that I would ask from the manufacturer side is do more of what Drew Estate did. And it doesn't have to be a super private thing. I think LFD did kind of a tasting seminar. They did one with other manufacturers, and then they did one for retailers. And I think just something set up like that, it does take a little bit of time out of your day where you're going to have meetings, but that's why we have 3 days. So I think a little bit more of that.
Note, I don't think that necessarily everybody is so stressed out, because we saw a drop in attendance and foot traffic on the 3rd day, as is to be expected, obviously. To a certain degree, I believe it's inevitable.
Yeah.
No matter how long the show runs for. If it's 5 days, the last day is going to be slow. If it's 3 days, the last day is going to be slow.
Yeah.
And obviously PCA had made that change, getting rid of the 4th half day, sort of. And I also understand, you know this better than anybody, you have a business to run, and not everybody can afford the luxury of being away from the shop or the lounge for 3 full days.
Right.
So a lot of people might try traveling back on the Sunday so they can open up shop on Monday. But I'm completely with you. I think there's plenty of opportunity and time, if you want to go and see some of these educational bits and pieces. And this is something I've been saying for the past years. Obviously, the trade show is one of the major business focal points during the year and throughout the cigar industry calendar, if you will. But at the same time, this is our opportunity as an industry to get together, hug, kiss babies, and show some love and embrace the camaraderie and the conviviality. And at the same time, where else do you have the opportunity to educate or share inside information and knowledge about your brand, your processes, what you do and what sets your brand apart, then PCA Trade Show, where you have all the major retailers and international people in attendance, and you can, in a very condensed way, share crucial information on your brand with the widest possible audience. And I think manufacturers and people in attendance should truly embrace that opportunity.
Absolutely. And I'll touch on Monday first. I told my father when we were booking flights and hotels, I was like, I want to be there majority of the day Monday. You know, you got to get back, gotta get back to the shop. But Monday for me was a big day where I was able to spend some time with you and I got to meet Jeremiah. It's that day where you can take your time a little bit more and really go see the people you want to and meet some incredible people, because from the manufacturer side, it's slower for them too. So you're able to meet some of those faces behind, you know, the cigars you're smoking that most people only get a chance to see once a year, and that's at PCA. And that's, you know, I've said since the first year I went, I don't think unless something comes up where I can't make it, I don't think there will be a PCA I miss, because it is awesome to see all of these massive personalities under one roof, you know, sharing the same floor, sharing the same customers. And they also, you know, for them, they get to see what their competition is doing a little bit. And I think that makes it fun.
One thing I also thought was remarkable. I was a little worried going into the trade show that without having Bar Luca, Circle Bar in Vegas, the show would lack that one center hub where after hours people can just come together, have a cigar, and even if you don't know what to do or where to go, you go to Circle Bar or Bar Luca at the Venetian Palazzo venue, and there's going to be half the industry there, and you can always find somebody to have a cigar with, have a drink with, and have a chat with. And New Orleans being a functional, normal city and not the Disneyland that is Las Vegas, would lack that sort of cohesiveness. And to a certain degree, I think that things were a little more spread out.
Absolutely.
Because people go to different venues for dinner or have cigars here and there. But at least the PCA found two great venues with Cuban Creations and Manning's Sports Bar, where people could go hang out. You had to present your badge to get in. But there were always people there. It was a good crowd. It was, and a good place to enjoy the evening.
It was. And I love telling this story, but my first year going to the show, being in Vegas, you know, I had heard about Circle Bar, how everybody goes there. And so we had a drink there, and I look over to my right and it's George Padron sitting right there. And it's, you know, being kind of nerdy and Padron being just one of my all-time favorite brands, you know, you're a little starstruck. But then you're like, oh, we're just sitting beside each other having a drink. And so I agree, it lacked a little bit of that. But I think again, this is a learning experience. It's been 10 years since PCA has been in New Orleans. So I only expect next year to get better with that and have more of those kinds of venues.
Andrew, let's zoom out a little bit and trade show aside, or just in mind, what is your feeling for the industry in general moving forward with the upcoming months in 2025? We obviously spoke about some of the uncertainty regarding the whole tariff situation, but what was your feeling? What did you hear from other people on the show floor in regards to the industry at large?
Well, I think the biggest thing is most retailers around the country are starting to kind of figure out that old school event style isn't what it's about anymore. I think, you know, we're out of the cigar boom. You know, it's kind of starting to get back to normal a little bit. And so it's really what can manufacturers, what can retailers offer to that end consumer? And so I think we're going to start seeing a lot more experiential type events happening. It's something we pride ourselves on here, is kind of more of that experience with an event rather than come do a buy four, get one, you know, you get a box, you get five. So I think as long as the industry kind of continues with that mindset, it'll continue to grow. We've seen it here where that just out of college, people have their first job, they finally have some money, you know, they're starting to get into it. And And I hope that's a thing around the country. I know we for sure see it here in the Midwest where, it's not your old man hobby anymore. Um,
So what you're referring to is also sort of a generational shift?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'd say our average smoker in here now is 40 to 50, whereas, 5 years ago when we first opened, it was 50 to 60. And now, we have groups of 6, 7, 8, 25, 26-year-olds coming in. They're allowing us to deep dive and kind of nerd out with them a little bit. And, as their first grown-up hobby, if you will, they're taking it in full stride. Nobody's playing sports anymore. We're out of school, we're working, and they're really taking that nerdy approach to it, to figure out why it is that they actually like what this offers.
Another venue or another shop and lounge that I think does a remarkable job at that. And I had a great meeting with them. Another father and sons trio or quartet is Industrial Cigars.
Love the Frakes.
In Texas. The Frakes family, I think, has done a remarkable job in sort of representing that newer generation of retailer slash lounge operator, a true family business, and very much focused on the experiential side of things. So I'm completely with you. I think that's truly where people need to put a lot of focus and energy on, to offer educational value, experiential value, and appeal to a younger demographic.
Absolutely. And just to touch on the Frakes real quick, if you are ever in Dallas, Frisco area, you have to go to Industrial. The way they have their place set up, it is gorgeous. You will find one of the Frakes there at all times. I believe Brandon's wife is also pretty active within the shop. I text Brandon every now and then. We'll just bounce ideas off each other. They become really good friends. So if you're ever in that area, you have to go by. It is incredible experience.
And again, what your father said about your conversation or exchange with Dave Garofalo, or what you just said about the Franks family, also goes to show how retailers are helping each other, communicating with each other, and all together we can build that ecosystem. And that to me is remarkable and a very important aspect of our industry.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's like he said, there's a few shops around here that we are very, very close with. And we preach, go and visit every single one. There might be one that you call your home shop. There might be one, maybe it's here that your date night shop, but there's 7 days in the week. There's plenty of time to go visit everybody and for the love to go all around.
What's in store for LIT Cigar Lounge, and what do you have in mind, or what do you have planned for the remainder of the year?
Pretty event focused. Like I said, we'll have an announcement hopefully here in a few weeks. That's kind of the start of the year for us. We're going to wait until after PCA to roll it out. But in August we have Pedro coming in. We're doing a massive car show. We did it with Matt Booth last year. It'll be 100+ cars outside. We'll have 300 people roaming around this place, smoking, drinking good. Very excited for that. We've got Nimish coming in from Rocky Patel. And then the rest of the time we love to do, like you said, wine. Big wine family. We love to do wine tastings, love to do spirits tastings. We're releasing a few pretty sought after single barrels throughout the rest of the year. So we'll be doing some fun events with that.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you very, very much for sharing your thoughts, your experiences on the trade show. And of course, thanks for giving us this fabulous tour of LIT Cigar Lounge. We'll be here today and tomorrow hosting some very, very special Marifel cigar experiences. We have people coming in to taste the cigars with us and learn a little more about the family history and what makes the brand unique. It's my first time in this state, in this area of the country, and I've fallen in love with it. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it's very, very easy when you have such a home spot like here and such phenomenal hosts like your good self and your parents, of course. So thank you very, very much for that. Thank you for being one of our very few but tremendously treasured partners here in the United States. And I can wish you nothing but continued success
Thank you.
and all the very, very best for the journey ahead. It's been quite remarkable what you've built in just a few years, really. And I see a very bright future ahead of you. So all the very, very best for that. And again,
Thank you.
thanks for having me. Thanks for hosting us, and thanks for welcoming all of our Light 'em Up family here at LIT Cigar Lounge in St. Louis today.
Of course. Thank you for coming up.
Great pleasure.
Thank you, my friend.
Folks, thank you very, very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure showing you LIT Cigar Lounge here, hosting you and sharing a bit of behind the scenes of this place and the PCA trade show that we just witnessed down in New Orleans. We will keep the lounge open, of course, for all of you to continue enjoying your cigars, enjoying the conversation. Let us know what your thoughts are, what your impressions were of this year's trade show, and then I hope to see you all again next week. And whilst I'm here in the US, still touring and seeing a lot of our partners. It's been an absolute pleasure. See you next week, same time, same station. And until then, light 'em up, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks, Reinhard. Good show. Lovely cigar lounge.
It is absolutely, Ian. Whereabouts are you? It looks like you're
I'm
somewhere
in my garden. In the garden of my flat in London.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Because it's still bright and light up there, so I thought maybe you're in
It's
the
still light. Yeah, it'll be light for another half hour, I think. So, yeah, it's nice. And it's getting cool, but it's okay.
Well, we certainly have tremendous weather here, so we're enjoying that and we're taking full advantage.
Yes.
Thanks everybody over on the live stream. Again, same time, same station next week. We'll see you all on. Cheers.
Great show. Thank you.
Good to see you, Reinhardt.
Brian, it's great to see you again. Where have you been? Hiding
I've
out west?